Okay, so going to work through the pseudocode algorithm question for the, I think this is a 2014 exam paper for Unit 2 of GCSE Computer Science. Okay, and task 2 is the pseudocode. So a diving competition calculates the final mark for each dive based on the marks of 6 judges. Each judge awards a mark individually up to a maximum of 6.0. The highest mark and the lowest mark are recorded, but they're not used to calculate the final mark. The final mark is calculated by adding the 4 remaining marks together and then dividing by 4. Using a text editor, write an algorithm which inputs 6 judges' marks and outputs the lowest mark, the highest mark, and the final mark. Save your completed algorithm as drivingalgorithm.txt. So for example, with inputs 5.9, 6.0, 5.9, 5.7, 5.6, 5.7, the output would be the highest mark is 6.0, the lowest mark is 5.6, and the final mark is 5.8. Because they reject 5.6 and 6.0 and then they add the others together and divide by 4. Okay, so the average is 5.8. Right, let's open Notepad and have a go at this question now. Okay, so the first thing to do is remember the basic structure is to declare the variables, set any initial values, do the processing, do the inputs, then do the calculations, the processing, and then do the outputs. Okay, so let's work through that in turn. Now I'm going to guess here. We're going to need declare highest mark as integer, declare lowest mark as integer, declare final mark as integer. Okay. We're also going to need each judge take an input their score. So we're going to declare current judge's mark as integer. Now that variable is going to be used 6 times in a loop. I'm not going to declare 6 separate judges marks. I'm going to just use one and do it in a loop. Okay, I just realized all of these should be float because they're decimals. They're not integers at all. So that's my first mistake. Okay, float. Right. I'm also going to use a loop, so I'm going to declare an index to control the loop, and loop index is integer. Okay. Do I need anything else? I can always go back and add more variables later. I think that might be enough for now. Okay. Right, now when we start the program, the highest mark is going to be 0. Okay, because we want any mark that is above 0 will then become the highest mark. Right, whereas the lowest mark at the start of the program I'm going to set to 6. So then any mark below 6.0 will be the low mark. Okay, if I was to do the lowest mark set to 0, the lowest judge's mark was 1, then and this variable would not store the value 1. Okay, so you have to inverse the values for invert them. For the highest mark must become 0 and the lowest mark must become 6. Okay, otherwise your calculations will not produce correct answers. Okay, going to set final mark to 0 because that's going to be the average, and I guess we could make no, we don't need that. Current judge's mark, I guess we could just set that as well to 0. We don't really need to. I'm going to set that later with an input, but just to start us off to 0. Right. So now what we're going to do, we're going to do all of the inputs and the processing and the outputs for just one single judge, and then work out which of those lines of pseudocode need to be repeated for the rest of the judges and put a for loop around those lines. Okay, so do it for one judge to start with, and then we'll go back and create the loop afterwards. Now the first part is going to be output please enter the current, or just enter the mark, the judge's mark. It doesn't really matter what you put here between the speech marks, the judge's mark. You could say current judge's mark, it doesn't really matter. Okay. So input current judge mark. Let's just make it singular. Yeah, current judge mark. Okay. So now the current judge has inputted his or her mark. Now then, what are we going to do with that mark? Well, we have to compare it to the highest score and the lowest score. Okay, so if current judge mark is greater than the highest mark, then the highest mark becomes or takes the value of that current mark. Set highest mark to current judge mark. Okay, and if next one is to check the current judge's mark against the lowest mark. If current judge mark less than lowest mark, then set lowest mark to the current judge mark. Okay, and if. So now that will work to identify the current, to work out the highest overall mark and the lowest overall mark. I need also to do the total. I need a total. There we go, a running total. Declare running total as float. Okay. So let me move this up. Set running total, and I need to set that to 0 as well before I start the program. Set running total to 0. Okay, you could put 0.0, but doesn't really, for any reals you could do that, but it doesn't really make sense. 0.0. Yeah. Doesn't really matter. You wouldn't gain or lose marks for doing that. Set running total to running total plus current judge mark. Okay, that's going to keep adding up the current judge's mark to all the rest of them in a running total. Okay, right, now then we need to calculate the running total minus the highest mark minus the lowest mark. Okay, so I'm going to actually declare another variable to store that. Declare final total as float and set that to 0 or 0.0. Okay, so my final total is going to be equal to the running total minus the highest mark, because we discard that highest mark, minus the lowest mark. Okay. Then going to set the, did I have a final mark? Yeah. Set final mark to the final total divided by 4. Okay. And then I need to output, what do I output? Outputs the lowest mark, the highest mark, and the final mark. Okay, so output, you could just do output lowest mark, output highest mark, and output final mark, and that would be enough to get the marks for that part. I'm not quite finished. I haven't yet made the loop, by the way. Or you could put a nice message there, output the lowest mark is, and copy that. The highest mark is, oops, the highestest, and the final mark is Okay, and again, you could put a plus sign there to concatenate to the strings to add this, like that. It doesn't really matter. I'm sure you wouldn't gain or lose marks if you didn't put that plus sign in. Okay, right, now which of these lines do I need to repeat for each of the individual judges? Well, each of them, we got to input 6 marks, we've got to output message 6 times, input 6 times, compare to the highest mark 6 times, compare to the lowest mark 6 times, and set to the running total 6 times. So all of those lines, they're highlighted, they must be repeated more than once. Now if I press the tab key here, I think it will delete all those lines. Yeah, it does, so let's not do that then. Other software will indent for you as a block. This software, Notepad, doesn't, so they indent all of these. Okay. I'm going to make this into a for loop. It's a for loop because we know exactly how many times we must go around the loop. Okay, if it's a set number, use a for loop. If it's an unknown number, use a while loop. Okay, so for index equals 1 to 6. How will we do this? I'm going to make it inclusive, like that. Do, okay. Index equals 1 to 6, do. Right, and then down here, do an end for. I can't exactly remember, sorry, in the grammar, the guide to this pseudocode, if I put the word do here or not. It doesn't matter. Again, you wouldn't gain or lose marks if you put the word do in or don't put the word do in there. What they're looking for is this part here, a for loop, okay, where you repeat these lines. So I think that actually now is good enough for this solution. Let me just get up that USB key where did I put the mark scheme for this? Ah, here it's here, yeah. This is 2014. Let's check the mark scheme. See, did I miss anything out? But I think that's good enough to get the marks here for the. So declare the variable, set them all to 0, do the output, input, comparison, calculations, do the for loop. I think that should be enough. Okay. Let's check the mark scheme for this pseudocode. Ah, this is the mark scheme for the Unit 1 exam. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it. So declare judge mark equals 0, max mark equals 0, min mark, total, final mark. Okay. Repeat or a for loop 1 to 6. Input the judge's mark. If the judge's mark is higher than the max mark, then you set the max mark to the judge's mark. Yeah. Total equals total plus that until 6. Loops and for. Total equals total minus min mark. Total equals total minus max mark. So they did that in 2 lines. I did it here in 1 line. Okay, let me just change that then. Set final total to running total minus. I did those 2 minus takeaways on the same line. They did it as two separate lines like that. Okay. Output the highest, output max mark, output lowest mark, min mark, final mark, yeah. Okay. So that is the good enough solution there to this question. Okay. Alright, I hope that was a useful video for you. Okay. Thank you.